I would like to discuss about how to repair the lineage and how to build up the lineage. So I'm sure we've heard 7 generations, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, it discusses about 7 generations of basically raising one's self-worth, right, and one's self-esteem through character development and spiritual and emotional maturity, and high levels of creativity is able to obtain generational wealth. And I think whenever we're thinking about repairing the lineage or building up the lineage, I think we're talking about generational wealth that we seek. And generational wealth is not just about cash. It's about a legacy, right? A lot of what we call the elites who have obtained generational wealth, it's more than just a cash flow, okay? A great example that is that I'm sure we all know is the Kennedys. You know, they were able to create generational wealth, right? And I imagine in the earlier sort of movement of that, it's not necessarily easy, right? But a lot of these what we call groups that have some sort of wealth, right? Some sort of creativity in the way that there's a prosperity, just a natural prosperity within that particular lineage, and there's not so much of like a struggle, and so much of the poverty consciousness, and so much of low self-worth and low self-esteem. I think a lot of us on this planet right now are trying to either repair our lineage. I mean, I think we're doing both. We're trying to repair our lineage, and we're also trying to build up our lineage. Regardless if you're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, but those who are of the, African American, Latino, these particular Native American people of color have experienced major sort of downgrade to the lineage. When we think of with the sort of white supremacy that has gone on this planet for many centuries. So I think there's in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the ancient Vedic social structure within the 7 generations it's very similar to when we think of like the tribes of the Native Americans, and I imagine the tribes as well in Saudi Arabia when it comes to craftsmanship, creativity, prosperity. So it really stems from the development of the higher mind. Okay, so when we think of generational wealth, right, we see it a lot of times as in this is just luck. They just got it. They just are have miracle, and we don't really recognize this sort of spiritual development that had to occur for this generation that you're seeing to have that kind of luck and that magic. And I'm sure people wonder, so how, if there's, these quote unquote white people these elites type of white supremacy that have all, they've conquered the land and they have all this wealth and they own the nice part of town and stuff like that, but they're a part of generational type of even genocide, right? They could have ancestors that are part of like removal of like Native Americans, or their ancestors are part of some kind of discrimination or some kind of even slavery, right? I'm sure a lot of people, particularly white people, who have a strong sense of generational wealth, most likely their ancestors have had slaves, let's be honest. So people wonder, like, how does, having slaves, grants somebody to having like wealth, like generational wealth, as in their, the descendants. And I think generational wealth in creating the lineages has a lot to do, of course, all sort of ethnic groups have some kind of, we've all been in sort of opposition with each other in many ways. It's just in the last, we think, thousands of years, it has heavily been about, this sort of rise of the Caucasian race. But that's not the only race that has had a sort of risen into power, right? There's many races who have risen into power just at different periods of time on planet Earth. Our history of planet Earth is a lot longer than just when we think of the white supremacy or the Caucasian rise into power. There's a lot more to history, and there's been, all races have had their, risen into power and then have fallen to, another race that risen to power, and so on and so forth. I think firstly, to repair the lineage, it really does take 3 generations of basically raising consciousness, is what I want to say, right? We can hustle, we can hassle, we can get in the rat race, but that's not sustainable, and there's no longevity within doing that. You need to have some kind of spiritual magnetism, some sort of radiance, some sort of craftsmanship, some sort of creativity. Because we may get something that we want, some cheap money, get the cash immediate through some sort of cheap way, but that's not sustainable. And I think people who may be doing that now, trying to just get the quick money or something like that, they're just thinking more about themselves, right? Just about, and that's fine. But if you're curious about the lineage, it's not just about the cheap money. It's not just about the cheap cash flow. It's about more about the knowledge. Like most of the stuff that has been banned within this, Caucasian rise of, when we think of like the knowledge being like withheld from the like general public type of thing, is because that knowledge is able to help people raise their consciousness. And when you have individuals that can access like a sort of higher creativity, such as like Nikola Tesla, right, who was not in a part of any sort of secret society or elite type of group. He was just very independent and just wanting to explore the universe and to share his discoveries with anybody who would listen, right? When you have these type of people, when you have that kind of quality of the mind, that kind of higher mind, it makes a human very, very ingenious, very inventive, and, kind of brings about possibility that can generate expansion, right? Like a renaissance. When I think of a lot of lineages, like have generational wealth, right? They're investing in the renaissance of society. Either that is a sort of a technology, some sort of science, some sort of something, right? They're investing in the renaissance of humanity, and that's why they're able to sustain the generational wealth, because the renaissance of humanity isn't just a one-time hit wonder, one time get the wealth, the cash, and the cheap win or whatever. It's really about, they're investing in the evolution, not only of just of humanity and just of the planet, but they're also sort of investing in the growth, right? The growth of the humanity and the growth of this planet. And that can be through inventions, and that can be, again, through these technologies. And I think a lot of us is like we think of like average people, we don't really have necessarily knowledge or access to like what the elites are investing in and the new technologies and inventions, because frankly, elites don't want competitors, right? They don't want people to be able to, gain some kind of advancements, and then kind of, we're seeing several people being able to crack the code because they're just using common sense and developing their common sense to kind of see into the future. And I think that's basically what a lot of these lineages have been doing, is they're seeing into the future, and they're developing their consciousness, right? So that they can make right decisions, and so that they can teach their children to make right decisions. because we can we can create all kinds of karmas within our lineage, right? And I think the sort of downfall of like lineages is the karma, right? All of the karma that leads into all of this cause and effect, in which we're hating ourselves, we feel so low self-worth, we're caught in this poverty consciousness, we spend 20-30 years in that, and then we teach our kids that, and then our kids end up with some kind of trauma, like sexual trauma, because let's say we're a mother and we have like a boyfriend who is no good for us and that kind of thing. So the only way to really break through that is for someone to raise a consciousness. And I think a lot of the lineages that are seeming like unlucky, or just they can't, they just are caught in like a caste system that is, there's just really no growth in it, or there's kind of decisions that seem to be like poor decisions, poor quality, poor mindset, right? I think a lot of it has to do with the karma. It gotten so caught in the karmas of the illusions and the projections and the non-realities that they forgot to really focus on what actually is real, which is the raising of the consciousness. So I think, with raising of the consciousness, it has everything to do with the self-worth and the self-esteem and the value and the virtue of a human being. That, how we can sort of develop that is we're going to have to go out there and expand ourselves. We can't just be like living in the same karmic patterns of our parents or grandparents. We're going to have to try new things, and we're going to have to be experimentative, and sometimes we're going to have to walk alone, and we might not even only have one person. Our family might not even understand what we're doing until like 15 years later, right? And we might not even like see results for our sort of devotional efforts for 10 years, and I think because we get so much into like the discouragement that we don't focus on the enthusiasm, right? Like, oh, one more breakthrough, and I think if we really want to repair, we're going to need a lot of energy, right? Because we're going to have to go the distance. We're going to have to really build up not only our consciousness, our mindset, our sort of spiritual sort of spiritual power, but we're also going to have to be able to kind of go out there and into the world pretty courageously, pretty boldly, almost fearlessly, to really claim our creativity and really put it out there and to build it up within ourselves. So at the end of the day, it really goes back to the raising of our consciousness, the amount of creativity and the higher creativity that we're working on. And 3 generations of that, in the way that a lot of times the parent maybe will help support the child going to college. Maybe the parent never went to college. That's a step in raising the vibration of the lineage. Or let's say you have a grandparent who really planted a seed within the grandchild about going to this place, like a geographic region, right? And then going to that geographic region that's vastly different from maybe their homeland. It kind of brings about an expansion of possibility for what one can create. So, it's like 3 generations that are, kind of sort of working on the turning of the thought, like getting out of the common thought, the mediocrity, the fear thought, the settling, I'll just go for this because I'm at a disadvantage. And I think all ancestors, spiritually are all in support of each other and all trying to help that one generation that has the possibility, based on the environment and based off of that person's choice, right? It's a free will choice to continue to up-level the lineage. They're all kind of supporting that generation. And if you're the youngest generation within your lineage, right, the younger generation, and you're watching this and you're like, yeah, I would like to build up, my creativity, raise the consciousness, work on the self-worth, the self-esteem, go out there into the world and really claim, my my breakthrough, my victory, and developing the spiritual the spiritual maturity to actually hold that. I think you're going to have a huge support, a huge wave from the ancestors, no matter how you think they are, who they were, or what kind of downfall or what kind of non-reality or illusion that they're in. There could be tide, karmic debt, these karmic pattern that is draining, right? They're still energetically like cheering you on, because they know when you, as the younger generation within the lineage, sort of raise the consciousness, they get to capture that wind as well. They get to capture that wave as well, because they're in the same kind of the same kind of ocean that you're in. So if you're creating the waves, they're going to feel that, and they're going to be affected, and they're going to be empowered by that as well, even if they don't even do anything with it, because they're so deep into their karmic debt, or at least it will be something that they may have stored in their like sort of memory that they could use for their future lives, right? So regardless, we're all setting up our entire ancestors' like future lives and rebirth by our choice to upgrade our mind. And I think it really does go with the mind, right? We focus so much like on the body. Like sometimes I see so much about the body, the product, the body, but I think we're all realizing within this healing community, which you find information on raising the lineage, is that it's not about the body. You have to let go of the body. It has to be on the mind. It has to be your ability to develop your psychic gifts, your ability to raise your creativity, and your ability to connect with this sort of futuristic mind, because your craftsmanship is based off of your mind. The wealth that you create, that you share, that has integrity, is going to be based off of the sort of expansion and the higher intelligence of your mind, and the way you think, and the way that you interact with life, right? When it becomes more of, it becomes more radiant, it becomes more like peaceful, it becomes more empowered and like knowledgeable, like a natural knowledge. That is the perfect sort of ground for us to receive like entrepreneurial ideas, or entrepreneur type of like a creative niche or creative edge that can really become something of its own, right? And that's you kind of getting into the Renaissance. You can even create your own Renaissance, and then let your future generations just kind of expand upon that Renaissance that you are already sort of creating through the unblocking of the mind, because a lot of poverty consciousness has to do with like the being uneducated, being low self-esteem, low self-worth, because you're not getting knowledge on how you can kind of access deeper parts of your mind. So I just wanted to share this kind of quick discussion on how to repair the lineage, and how to start to build up your lineage for future generations.